Who I am as a midwife is inextricable from who I am as a woman of faith. I believe and practice reverence for the health of my body, soul, and spirit. I also believe fiercely and equally in personal autonomy and personal responsibility. I believe how and where and with whom a woman births to be a human rights issue. I despise and will not participate in the infantilization of women. My clients hire me for a reason. They come first, second, and last. They are my priority.
Holy Wild Birth is a podcast embracing the reclamation of giving birth, rooted in God's original design, undisturbed.
Here, we share home birth stories highlighting God's presence as the great midwife, as well as conversations about all aspects of a holistic, spirit-led childbearing year. From the perspectives of myself, traditional midwife Lauren Hall of Rooted in Eden Private Contract Association,
And me, holistic doula and birthkeeper Brooke Collier of Sister Birth.
To choose a holy wild birth journey is to consecrate all your decisions unto the Lord.
And to reclaim creation unadulterated by centuries of human attempts to control and improve upon what God has already called good.
Please remember, birth is not a medical event, but a natural process. We are not your care providers, and this should not be taken as medical advice. In today's episode, we have a real treat for you. Instead of a birth story, we have a midwife story. Now, she does share some of her own birthing history, which impacts how she midwives and shows up for women. She also shares very openly and vulnerably how she has withstood an attack after a bad outcome, letting the Lord defend her alone, and how she has stood her ground to be loyal to the ones that she serves versus the system that she has recently boldly walked out from under. I'm very excited for you to hear her story. I think you might be shocked, challenged, and hopefully encouraged as you listen in. I also have to warn you, a little more than halfway through, her dog wanted to join the conversation. She was a little bit concerned about a storm that was rolling in and got really quite close to the mic and kept panting into it. So you will hear her breathing. I kept trying to, block her from the mic to no avail. So please, I hope you will overlook that and still lean in and enjoy what Cindy has to share with you today. Happy listening.
As we dive into today's birth story, just a reminder that the choices and beliefs of the mamas sharing their stories here are as individual and varied as the storyteller herself, and do not necessarily reflect the beliefs or recommended actions of Lauren and or Brooke.
All right. Well, this is welcome to the Holy Wild Birth podcast. I am sitting on a super comfy couch with a very dear friend of mine, Cindy, and we are here today to just talk a little bit about her birth and midwifery journey, and so much. There's so much in her story that I'm excited for you to hear and glean from. And so, welcome, Cindy.
Thank you, Lauren. It's great to be here. I mean, it's just great to be with you.
I love when we get to be that. Most of the time, these podcasts are done remotely, but getting to be in person in the room is so much fun. So, very excited.
Me too.
So, I was thinking we'd just start with, birth. What's your philosophy on birth? Your own birth stories, if you'd like to share those.
Yeah. Well, I think my philosophy on birth was shaped by my birth stories.
Yeah.
And I got married young when I was 18 and got pregnant right away. So I had my first at 19 in a hospital. My first two were in hospital. I have four. And I would say and they were all unmedicated. But I think the thing that I took away from those, every time I would leave the hospital, I think, why am I here? Why am I here? It just, and I wasn't in the quote birth world at all. It's just, it's like, I'm not sick.
Right.
Nothing, I just had a baby. Why am I here? That was just the question. Why am I here? And then, and this will definitely date me, but it was before the internet, before cell phones. I ended up with a book called Spiritual Midwifery that I had read. And that's what I needed. It just resonated so clearly. And again, it's by word of mouth that I found with my third pregnancy, which was, quote, air quotes, my last. And so I found a community midwife to attend me. And that was an amazing experience. I'll never forget sometimes she came to my house for a prenatal, and I think we only had like 4 prenatals because just how long it took me to find her. But one time she came to my house, but a couple times they came to her house, and she did prenatals in her mobile home travel trailer. And I never forget, I brought my kids with me, and I had 2 littles, and her husband had gone out to the garden and picked strawberries right from the bed and brought it in for the kids. And I thought that was so cool. And I was having some issues with varicose veins and spider veins. And she said, well, if you can find a cool stream to go soak your feet and your legs in, that'll really help. And I thought, well, that sounds amazing. But, it wasn't anywhere I was. But I thought that was, I don't know, it's just a whole different, I remember in the exam too. During the exam and sitting on her floor, she, I don't remember if she took my blood pressure, but she looked at my gums, my mucosa, and she looked under my eyes, and she had put her hands on me, which, was just different than the care I'd received.
In a compassionate way.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. She's touching me while she's assessing me. She's not just asking questions and writing it down.
Right.
She was actually
connecting.
Yeah, connecting and observing a lot of things. So had a beautiful birth, straightforward birth, and then we were done. And my husband at the time was in the military, which was kind of a joke if you know me and my family. But we ended up not re-upping, and so we left the military, and we were moving to Virginia. And in the midst of that, we had decided that we were done. And so once we got settled, my husband made an appointment to get a vasectomy. And I was struggling. By this time, that baby was 2, still in diapers, had a passy, but we were the family in the church that people would bring. I mean, we were poor. People would bring presents to, they'd bring Christmas trees to. I mean, we were that family. My husband was working hard, but it was a government job, so it was low paying. And I was homeschooling 2 of the littles. And I know now, looking back, that I was nutritionally deficient in a lot of things. I remember planning my menus basically. I mean, I was good at being thrifty, but I had, I just knew what I knew, and I was limited in my knowledge. Sure. But like, I remember planning my menus, like rotating. Okay, this day is pasta, this day is beans, this day is rice, this day is, just like rotating those as what I planned around.
Yeah.
So I know now that I was not getting enough protein, but it's interesting because I do remember being in the kitchen and thinking, I want some toast. And then I just remember thinking, I need to add some peanut butter to that. Not because anybody told me or I had researched it, but just like something in me very, I don't know, primally just said I need to add some peanut butter to that, But I still know I was not getting enough protein. I mean, we might have a chicken for the 4 of us that we would make last for a month, So that pregnancy, I don't know why I did this. All I can tell you is that I was overwhelmed during that pregnancy because it was unplanned. We found out I was pregnant 2 weeks before my husband was supposed to get a vasectomy. And apparently, so he had his appointment, and the office called and said, hey, we just noticed that we haven't had a conversation with your wife, and that's part of our policy. We don't do it unless we have a conversation with him. I said, okay. And so we rescheduled it till after we could talk. Well, and again, I didn't know that these things were not optimal for me, but I was using a spermicide and a diaphragm and condoms. We were using all of those.
You were trying real hard not to.
We knew what caused this, and we were done. We never slipped up. We never didn't use anything, no matter when it was. We just always used it. And I feel pregnant still. And I was so stunned. I was so stunned because I already felt like I was not doing a very good job as a mom, and so I had no idea how I was going to, I just had no idea how I was going to do what was required, partly because we were poor, but I didn't do things the easy way. Even if we'd had money, I still would have made all of our own food. I still would have used cloth diapers. And let me just tell you, cloth diapers back in the day, we're not talking about these cute little snappy nappies you guys got going now. We're talking about straight up cloth with safety pins and plastic pants.
Plastic pants. The plastic pants are the things that get you. Yeah, oh my goodness. Those are.
And so I knew that I had arrived when I could change a baby's diaper in the bathroom on my lap with plastic pants and pins and everything, and not have anybody get injured. But so finding out that I was pregnant at that point, the best way to describe it to me is I felt like I just gotten, like somebody just slapped me upside the head, and I was knocked down this deep, 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 deep hole. And when I landed at the bottom, it was just dark, and I could see up. I knew there was light somewhere up there, but it was just overwhelmingly dark. And I just didn't know how I was going to do life, because I barely was hanging on before that.
Yeah.
So, and I always tell this story to my clients, because, and you'll see why in a minute, it shaped my practice.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So, everybody, if you know anybody or have been depressed yourself, you know that depression doesn't always look the same. Some people can't get out of bed, and all they do is sleep. Other people, it comes out, they run away. Other people, whether it's through alcohol or physically leave, and other people, they just shut down and they just are there, but not really there. And that was kind of me. I did not have the tools to even identify what I was feeling, much less process it. And so I had 3 kids. I just had to show up. And so I did. Right. I showed up. But as we all know, you can't, those feelings go somewhere.
Yeah.
Right? And so
they catch up with you at some point.
They do. They come out. And so what that looked like in the months as I was getting more and more pregnant was everything was, kids are kids, but everything be fine. And then it seemed like out of the blue, I would snap. And I would snap in rage. And I tell people, and the interesting thing is, I don't know if my daughters even have heard me tell this story as adults to other people. So I don't even know if they know this, but that I tell people, if there had been a camera in my home, my kids might have been taken away. Now, it wasn't ongoing. This is not to justify it or minimize it, but it wasn't ongoing. It only happened. I say only happened, again, not to minimize it. It happened probably 3 or 4 times before it was unacceptable for me to really lose my stuff with my kids, in the sense of smack somebody or yank them around or something like that. And so it became, I still remember thinking through this, and I remember thinking through it like it was a mathematical problem, a very linear, I know now the word, but very, it's like, okay, this is the problem. My kids, I'm treating my kids this way, and I know that's not right, and they don't deserve it. So that's the problem. So the best way to solve that problem is for me to get out of the equation. It wasn't like I was weeping and wailing and depressed and crying all the time. It's like, no, this makes logical sense. I'm the problem here. So I have to get out of this equation. And so at 28 weeks, it was one of these rare times I knew it was like, I'm going to make something up. Like a Thursday, I was going to be in the car by myself, and it didn't happen very often, but I'd be driving. We lived very close to DC. And so I knew I'd be driving over this bridge where there's a river. And I thought, okay, when I'm tomorrow morning, this is Wednesday, tomorrow morning, that's the best way to handle this. I'm driving off that bridge. And then I know it'll be hard for everybody, but it's better because this is not okay. This is not okay. And so, and we didn't talk about this. So
No.
yeah. So in the course of the evening on Wednesday night, Dave would come home from work and we're getting the kids ready for bed, just doing the normal stuff. And the phone rings, and it's a dear, dear friend of ours from Florida, which is where we're both from. And it was a guy, which is, my friend, but also, okay, back in the day when you had long distance, before you had cell phones, long distance, you paid by the minute.
Right.
And so it was like $2.50 a minute.
Yeah.
So if someone called long distance, is like you stopped what you did and you talked really fast.
Yeah.
And so I said, oh, hold on, I'll get Dave. He's like, no, actually, I called to talk to you. I said, oh. And he said, yeah, I felt like God wanted me to call you. I said, oh, okay. And I didn't, he just talked to me for a little bit, asked me how I was doing, but I was totally shut down. So I didn't really tell him anything, even though I had the opportunity. I just didn't. I was shut. I was totally already decided what was happening. So we hung up the phone, and then we continued on with kids stuff. And then about an hour later, another phone call from the same group of friends in Florida. And we grew up in the Lord with these people. So
Yeah.
So her name is Jeannie, and she called me.
Sending everybody to you.
Yeah. And so Jeannie called me, and she said, "Hey, what you doing?" I said, "Oh, yeah, fine, blah blah blah." I didn't really say anything, and hung up with her after a bit. And I'm going to say, I'm going to give you a warning. There's a cuss word coming, so you can bleep it if you want. But it reminds me of Anne Lamott a little bit.
Yeah.
So I just, when I hung up with Jeannie, I just rolled my eyes up to the Lord, and I said, all right, I won't do it. And so it wasn't like I had a plan other than that. And so I didn't know. And to this day, honestly, I don't think I lost my stuff with the kids in the same way. I think I just shut down even further because I realize now that a deeper level of my mama bear kicked in.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh no, we've got to protect these kids from you.
Yeah.
And so I did. And so now we go into labor. I had an unassisted home birth. I'd started going to an OB. That's why I thought, why did I go to an OB? I just had a home birth, 3 years ago. And I'm going to the OB, and I just like, why am I coming here? All they do is they barely touch me. They measure my belly. I pee in a cup, and I'm dragging my 3 kids, in the car. Just the whole OB appointment that was just meaningless and useless. So I stopped going. I started talking about doing a free birth. And I did, and it was beautiful. But the weird thing is I didn't, in the years, 20, 30 years later, I remember some of it, but I didn't remember a lot of it. But I had my baby, and I do remember after having her that I remember in the weeks afterward, I remember changing her diaper. And with all my kids, like I would change their diaper, and we do all the things. We like suck on their toes and bite their earlobes, whatever.
Yeah.
And I remember I was not doing that with her.
Right. You weren't
as I was changing. Yeah, I wasn't. And so I remember noticing that, and I remember thinking, oh, I need to do that so she doesn't feel, like left out. But it was like a mental, intellectual thing.
Right.
It wasn't that was coming from me because I was totally shut down. So I did that. I tried to remember to do all the things that I did with my other kids. But that depression lasted. She was 3 before I really came out of it. So that was a long, long, dark, dark tunnel.
Yeah.
And then, so that one was my 4th.
So how did you get out of that place? Like, when did you find the light again?
It wasn't until we moved to Georgia where we are now. And like I said, that baby was 3. How, I don't know how, Lauren. I don't know how. I didn't have any resources.
Yeah.
Other than just, I just continually, I was just continually at the end of myself and plastered onto the Lord, and if not literally, but, yeah.
Yeah, well, it makes sense why you're such an advocate for postpartum care and postpartum depression. And
and what I didn't tell you was very interesting. Now looking back after my training to become a midwife, I had, after she was born, immediately I had my face swole, my feet swole. I had a horrible headache. And I thought, I just need to drink more water. So I was just sucking the water down. But as I'm training to be a midwife, and because I didn't have any postpartum care, and by the way, 3 out of the 4 of my births, we moved at 6 weeks postpartum as well.
Wow.
Which just makes me cringe right now to think. But I now know that I had postpartum preeclampsia.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
It does. And so that's kind of scary. But when you think about my diet, like I told you, I had hardly any protein, that. So anyway, so that informed. So then I went through the next, couple of decades. I was homeschooling all my girls and just raising them. Along the course of it, I did become an EMT and worked a little bit, but so it was how I ended up becoming actually a midwife was my second daughter was having her babies, and she had had a home birth. And she had asked me to be present, just as her mom. I think it might have been at her 3rd labor. She was laboring, and she said, in the middle of it, she said, "Mom, you'd be good at this." And excuse me, I looked around at the midwives that was there, and I didn't say this to her, but I thought, no, I wouldn't. All this sitting around, I can't, because I'm not a very. My nature is I'm just high energy. And seeing the midwives sitting in the corner knitting or just like hanging out, just sitting with a mom, I'm like, yeah, no. But it wasn't, I don't know, it just stuck in my brain. And so I just started casting about, and I ended up finding my first apprenticeship like within a month.
Oh, wow.
Of what her
That's a quick turnaround.
It is. I didn't know what a CPM, I didn't know what NARM was. I didn't know anything except for what I knew about home birth midwives, from my experience.
And you'd had that beautiful, like very traditional wise woman serve you. And then it sounds like then this birth that you saw with your daughter, would you say they were pretty traditional, or were they?
Yeah, she was. She was a community midwife. I don't think she's a CPM. I can't remember if Margaret is or not, but so, I have to credit my daughter Brandy for that observation and that little nudge that I couldn't see that, but it was a little seed that she planted in my head. So I started my training, and there just wasn't, I wasn't on social media. So I didn't know what was out there. I did decide that because I know that I'm not an academic, I love learning, but I do not love prescribed learning. Right. And I learn in a certain way. And so I knew I didn't want to go to a midwifery college. So when I heard about the PEP process, the portfolio evaluation process for NARM, for the North American Registry of Midwives, that sounds like I can do that. So I started on that path. That's what I chose to do. And so I got through that process. That was kind of messy, but I got through that process, and then took the exam and I became a CPM in 2016, but I'd been practicing as, a primary midwife under supervision since 14. So that's how I got to be a midwife. And as you mentioned, my experience really informed the way that I practice, because I was the only midwife I know in Georgia, home birth midwife. I can't speak for the medical model. I found the Edinburgh Depression Scale early, just, how you research something, I found it. And I thought, that looks like something that would have been really helpful for me. So I just started giving it to my clients on intake and every trimester, and then postpartum as a tool, and explaining it to them. And it's just become, and then we started, in my practice, we start talking about planning your postpartum at the very first visit after they hire me. And, I give them resources. There's lots of resources now, even, 7 or 8 years ago, there weren't as many, but there's a lot more. And, the ones who come to me that are really scraping by financially, or maybe they don't have a church, maybe they're not a part of a church, but maybe they're not even part of a tribe. They just are out there, and I say, well, we need to plan even more for you because you have fewer resources. So we have to get more creative.
Yeah.
So it does take a chunk of our time. I have actually Brooke's, I don't know if you know this, I have Brooke's, the planning sheet for postpartum.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you could probably post that if Brooke wants to, because I asked her permission to use it as a guide for I'd like to just give them lots of resources.
Yeah.
I can post the guide to 555.
Yeah.
So 5 days in the bed, 5 days around the bed, 5 days around the house. And that's like the minimum, like, okay, that's the beginning of your recovery. And then after that, it's a gradual integration up until like 6 or 8 weeks when you can feel like you're, quote, back to normal.
Right.
And it's proven quite telling people's responses and their questions. And also when they come to me at 6 weeks for their final visit, and I do like an exit interview, where I ask them, so, how did you feel about this postpartum compared to if they had another one? I mean, they don't have the words. They're like, oh my God, I think everybody should do,
Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing. And it doesn't happen itself. It takes forethought and planning and intention to do it and to have it turn out well, because, and I've even started having moms, like, even though they have a great plan, it looks solid, I like them to have a plan B, because I did have a mom that did all the things and her plan A, a couple of things fell through. And so she still was scrambling despite all her planning. So now I'm like, okay, we need to have a plan B in place as well. Yeah. So my philosophy I would say from partly my own birthing experience, but also just my life is, I believe a well-nourished, well-hydrated, well-educated, well-supported, fearless women will birth beautifully.
Yeah.
And, I've just seen that time and time again. And the trick is to, what does that mean for that woman? Right. Because, women come to me, they're just realizing, oh, this standard American diet is not great. That's like the, people that come to me, that I don't have that many of those. Most people who come to me have at least knowledge that they're not doing
like they
that
have
anymore.
Some foundation.
Right. They do have some foundation. And just as an aside too, I'm also a volunteer chapter leader for County's Weston A. Price Foundation too. And so that does inform a lot of, at least my perspective. I mean, I don't push anything on anybody, but that does, give me a lot of resources as well. And I believe, to me, it feels very maternal in one sense when I have somebody come to me for their first home birth, whether it's their first baby or not, and they come to me and they have they have all my care and they love it and they think it's wonderful. And then they have another baby with me and they say, well, this time I think I was thinking about doing, I don't know, maybe if you could just like sit in the corner. And I said, of course I can. I can sit in the other room. And I've actually been paid to sit in another room just in case they need me. And I'm fine with that, And then by the third birth, I'm thinking about having a free birth. Okay, how can I help you? Like, I have been paid to just do a couple of prenatals, and then they do a free birth. And if they want me to come afterwards and I'm available, I'll come check them or check on baby or check their bottoms to see if they're doing any repairs, So I totally support women doing what they
that. Feel they
what resonates with them.
What they want.
I kind of feel like a really proud mama when someone, by their third baby, either they literally hire me to sit in the corner or they don't hire me at all.
Yeah.
That, I don't feel like that's a loss. I feel like that's a victory for both of us.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're like showing them that they can, that
yes,
you're in charge here and you're in control and you're empowered to birth your baby.
And they've tapped into their instinct, their intuition, whatever it is that they now feel confident in.
Right.
That. Yeah. Because not all my clients are Christians.
Right.
So a lot of them, they're just birthing women. But, I believe because God is the author of life, that that he will speak to them about what they're doing if they're open to it. Yeah.
It's beautiful. I love that you are like, that's the legacy you're in midwifery that you're leaving, right? That you are empowering women to really take back their birth, and that the ability to birth, like culture has taught us so much
to fear.
Much to fear the process and the medical, emergencies that could happen and all these things. And it's like, you're reminding them of their instinct.
Right.
It's beautiful.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah. So I guess, how is that playing out now? I know there's been a lot of shifts in the last couple of years for you.
There has.
I don't know how much you want to share here, but in these season changes, you started out as a CPM, and even as a CPM, you have really carried out but that's not a normal thing to hear a CPM midwife say, "Oh, I'm so excited to hear that they're going unassisted." But, that's not a normal mainstream philosophy. And, it's yeah. So as you've had some season shifts in the path you chose originally, do you still feel like you align with that?
Yeah. And maybe even more. And so when I first became a CPM, I won't say when I first became a midwife, because that was just a part of the path. But when I first became a CPM in my community around here, there were probably a handful of us new baby midwives. And so we had kind of, we would meet together and we, tried to connect. And part of what we were connecting over is that we had such stories and experience of being treated very, very poorly.
Yeah.
Most of us. There were a few that had some decent preceptorships, but most of us were treated very poorly by preceptors. And also we had observed, just on the outside, because we were students and we weren't really allowed on the inside, that the midwifery community was so hateful and catty toward each other, and like talking, gossipy, and it was like
competition.
Yeah.
And competitive spirit.
And so, in this small group, I started my midwifery training when I was 50 years old. So even though I'm not an experienced older midwife, I'm not an elder midwife, I'm an elder,
Right.
I'm 60 now. And so in this group, of course, I was the oldest person. So it felt like a burden for me that as we gathered together to talk about our new careers, if things started to digress into gossip or something, as you talked about one birth and all this midwife, I just gently would remind all of us, hey, remember, we really don't, this is not what we want to do. It's not the community that we want to have, because we see what it looks like and we want to do something different.
Yeah. Shift.
And so we had such a good start that I was very encouraged about going forward as sort of supporting each other. And so I tell you that because what happened in 2019 just completely obliterated that. It just obliterated. And that to me was one of the biggest losses to me.
I can imagine.
And what happened in 2019 was that, so in 2018, I kind of became, 2018, 50% of my mamas were vaginal birth after cesarean. And I just, had a really good record and results for these mamas. And so so that came with really good reviews, if you want to say, from the mamas, but it also came with some tension in the bigger midwifery community, because there were a lot of home birth midwives that wouldn't even take a mom who'd had a previous cesarean. So there was a little looking at me kind of sideways, because I'm a younger midwife experience, and I'm taking all these VBACs, but so there was a little bit of tension in the community about that. and then there was tension because of the way I was practicing. I didn't always do vag exams to assess a mom when I came, unless they requested it, or there was a reason that there's some information that I
Right.
thought would be helpful, and with, of course, the mom's consent. And so but sometimes if I did, and the mom was complete, but she didn't have the urge to push, I mean, I would, as long as mom and baby were doing well, we just waited until she had the urge. Most of the time, sometimes, the mom would say, "What can I do to get this?" And I would say, "Well, we can do this or that." So there are times there were suggestions, but in general, it was waiting for the mom's body and the baby to do what, and it worked out fine. But what that involved for me was longer labors, usually, right?
Right.
Monitoring mom, keeping track of baby. Feeding. The biggest challenge is keeping a mom hydrated and fed so she doesn't get exhausted. That's the biggest challenge. So anyway, and so there was some, again, side eye to me about how can you let a mom be 10 centimeters and for 10 hours before she's pushing. It's like, I had
to push.
Right. It's like, so, but it's not because there was any bad outcomes. It was just because that's not what they did.
It was foreign.
And that was foreign to them. Right. So that was 2018. So you can see there was a little bit of tension in the community because of that kind of way of practicing. And so then in 2019, I had a woman approach me that had a previous cesarean. The biggest thing I would say is that this woman was a woman of quite size. And so she had tried to find, anybody, an OB, a midwife that would let her try to have a labor, but she couldn't. And then she got on Facebook. This was back when I was on social media, and she saw that I was highly recommended. So she contacted me, and she came to me, and I'm going to spare a lot of the details, because the point is she came to me and agreed to take responsibility for her eating and moving her body and caring for herself, because I told her there had been other mothers who had come to me that had been diagnosed with gestational diabetes and that had reversed that diagnosis by how they ate. And so I knew it could be done.
Yeah.
And so I told her that. And so I gave her a book, the Lily Nichols book, Real Food for Gestational Diabetics, which was her first book, rather than, everybody knows, right, most people know Real Food, but the first one was Real Food for Gestational Diabetics. So anyway, we were off to the races. She was my client. Long story short is she had a stillbirth that was not recognized until we were in labor. And there's a lot of reasons for that. An anterior placenta, maternal habitat, as they call it. She just had a lot of adipose, in between. So she ended up with a baby that had passed for many days before we transferred. I transferred because her blood pressures were not coming down. They were just steadily creeping up. And, so we transferred. She did end up having a cesarean, and which that's a whole nother story, because they did not give her informed consent. They walked in and said, we can't find a heartbeat. And she's like, well, what are we going to do? And they said, we need to do a cesarean. They didn't say to her, Mama, I'm so sorry, but your baby has passed. So we want to give you some time to I know this is hard, but you can labor and have this baby, or we can do surgery. They didn't give her that, because I was there when they came in. They acted like, I don't even think she realized her baby was actually dead until after surgery, is my impression. And so, anyway, long story short, we left the hospital, and the family refused to talk with us after that, as I tried to offer postpartum care to her. And so, and she continued to refuse to talk to me after that, which is understandable, of course, but that grieved me, because I really wanted to care for her. I wanted to be there for her and her family. But she just, was not having any of it. And it wasn't until about 4 months later that she unleashed on social media. And they had a business page, and they also had a business website, and it had quite a bit of good following. And so she posted a horrendous picture of her baby, and I don't want to go into details, but if a baby's been passed 3 to 6 days, there's going to be physical evidence of that.
Right.
And it was awful. So she posted a picture of her baby. And then she posted a picture of me with my name, my address, my email, my phone number, and everything. And then her particular story and her grievances. And that hit the web. And after consulting with my attorney, she said in 3 days it had been viewed 1 million times. And it kind of went around the birth world, literally.
Yeah. It was everywhere.
It was. So that happened. And that happened. And after when that happened, I had 19 clients in my care. 3 of them were in the window of being due, like 37 to 41 and 2. And I mean, I was just going along, just doing my job. I was being very distracted, by all of the noise. But one of my midwife, she was a midwife friend then, she called me and I was getting ready to do a prenatal, and she lost her mind. She said, "What? Are you still doing births? Are you still doing prenatal?" I'm like, "I have clients due. Of course I am." She said, she lost her mind. I think her head actually separated from her shoulders. And so I just said to her, I said, "You know what? I will consider what you're saying and I'll pray about it." And she wanted me to I should be getting rid of all my clients. And I thought, there's no way at all that I'm going to do that unless you tell me to, Lord. You have to make it really clear for me to drop my clients right when it's before birth. So I was going to go to a energy session that I'd already scheduled. And as I was walking in, my attorney called, and she said that she had just talked to my assistant who was at the birth that was dealing with such horrible, horrible attacks on her. This woman was anybody who had ever tagged me in a birth, or anybody who was, I don't know what, but anybody who had ever tagged or associated with me, she was going after. And she had said horrible things to this assistant, like, "Oh, I see you have kids. Too bad wouldn't you hate it if one of those died?" I mean, it's just awful stuff. And so that assistant told me that she said, "I really feel like I need to take 6 months off of births right now." I said, "I totally understand."
Yeah.
And so I was on my phone with my attorney telling her that this assistant had said that. And something prompted me. Now, this attorney, she's an international birth rights attorney. If I said her name, everybody would know her that's in the birth world. And I said, for some reason, I said, "Hermine, do you think that's what I should do?" And I was like, I had this anxiety in my chest, and it's like, well, I can't do that. And she paused for probably 10 seconds, and she said, "You know what? I think that probably would be the best."
Yeah.
And Lauren, it was it was such a God thing, because it felt, the best way to describe it, it felt like a key that went in a lock that just clicked. And I went, "Oh, okay, that's what I have to do." I mean, there was no fight,
Right.
because I asked God to make it clear to me. And so then I spent the next days on the phone and on the phone with other midwives, trying to find midwives to take these women literally, especially these 3 at the very last minute. Which that was, I would say, there were 3 things that were the most painful about this ordeal. The first one was that, of course, the baby passed, Yeah. The second one was that I had to rehome 19 clients. I mean, that was so hard. And the third one was that, there's actually 4. The third one was the way that it just polarized and shattered the little bit of midwifery community that I thought we might have been building in a positive way. And it actually just went over the falls forever. And then the feeling in the midwifery community then became all the midwives were terrified that what was happening to me, which was a modern day witch burning.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah, it really was. And so they were terrified that it would happen, and justifiably, because what was happening in the midst of this was now they call it canceling or doxing. That's what was happening, and it was horrible. So all these midwives were shutting down their website and changing their voicemail, and they were just terrified that they were going to come after all of them.
Well, you had people coming after you too.
Oh yeah, I had so after on the day of the attack, my husband was actually traveling. My daughter was traveling with her dad in Spain, hiking the Camino de Santiago, and they were supposed to be gone 5 weeks, and they were gone 3. And they were on social media, and they started seeing this stuff. So they called me, and I'm coming home. I said, please don't let her ruin this trip. But he came home, and when he came home, by the time he came home, it had been like 3 days since the attack. I had to file police reports because I had death threats. And remember, they had my address, my email, my picture, my phone number. I mean, I had to change my phone number like within 2 days, because I am not exaggerating. I went to dinner with a midwife like the night afterwards, so we'd already planned. And I set my phone down, and it was constantly, and I didn't have my email set to notify my phone. So what was happening was either a phone call or a text. And I'm not joking when I say it was every 15 seconds. It was just insanity. And but this was before I had let my women go. So I couldn't turn my phone off because I was on call for 3 months. Right. So
then you're having to read it. You're having to.
Right. I'm having to at least look at who it's from. And you can't help glancing at the subject line. If it's an email or something that you open, my email was like white page after baby killer. You should die. You should burn at the stake. It was the most awful things that you could imagine that people would be saying. And so he came home. I had to file a police report, and I learned that you can't just file a police report because somebody says you should die. Excuse me. There's very specific things you have to look for. And unfortunately, there were so many, and my husband was charged with the job of going through like my Instagram direct messages to see if they were any valid threats. And I was going through my emails. And so there were a few that we had to file a police report for. And I know now that part of the fallout from this was that, because my husband, who was going through all of those instant message, and the direct messages and stuff like that, he would just shake his head, and he'd look so broken. He'd say, what's killing me is that the Instagram handle of some of the most nasty stuff. I said, what do you mean? He said, it'll be like mom of 4, Jesus lover, or something like that. And those would be the most nasty ones. So these are people who, because the mom who lost her baby was a missionary.
Yeah.
And so she had a lot of Christian or church people following her. But those were his name. Yeah, right. And yeah, who identified as Christians, right? So anyway, and I just think now, knowing what happened in the next several months, I think it literally broke his heart. Yeah, it literally broke his heart. So then the moms were rehomed, and it was really hard, but they were rehomed. And so then I had no prenatals, I had no births, I had no postpartums, for like 6 months.
Yeah, just a complete Sabbath.
Yeah, an enforced sabbatical.
Forced sabbatical.
A forced sabbatical. Yeah, so, and that led to then, now, when you hire a CPM, and I don't even know if most moms know this, but when they hire a CPM, they do have the right that if they are unhappy with her care or think she was dangerous, to file a complaint, a grievance with the board.
Right.
And so, of course, this mom had the right. So as time went on, that is what she did. And then the board is obliged to have what they call a peer review, to talk to me about the birth, and it includes the parents having a chance to have their say as well. So this was all on Zoom. So that happened on Good Friday, actually. That happened on Good Friday
Of this year.
Yeah. So it took them a while. So that the baby passed in 2019. So it took until this year, that long, because the board, the peer review, was supposed to be composed of people in your area that are your peers. Well, apparently when they did the interviews, they could not find any of my peers that felt like they could be objective. Everybody had a pretty strong opinion about it, even though, and I left this out, on the morning of the attack, the social media attack, I, like I said, I don't have my phone where it would go off when I get an email, but in the morning, first thing or in the middle of the night, I might check my email because I might have a mom saying, hey, my water broke or something like that.
Right.
So when I woke up that morning, I turned over my phone and looked at it, and it was just white, and you could see part of the subjects, and I didn't open it. I just turned it back over, and I said, Lord, you knew about this before I even woke up. That's just what I said. So I just gave it to the Lord. And my assistant, who had just signed on to be a student midwife, she'd given me a little card, and that she'd written a verse from Isaiah. All you have to do is stand. I can't remember the exact one, but all you have to do is stand and be still, and I will fight for you. And I felt like, and that card was right by my phone, so my eye caught it as I turned my phone over, and I thought, okay, I'm not going to defend myself.
Yeah,
I can't. And so the next days were, as my husband came home, were trying to find an attorney to see if we needed an attorney, because there had not been a crime committed, but she was going around social media saying that she had hired an attorney, she was going to sue me, and she was going to, basically destroy me.
right.
And so we're talking about being on the phone literally for hours a day, trying to find an attorney.
And the criminal charges stuff never went anywhere because there was never
a crime.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a tragedy.
Absolutely.
But not a crime. And so after that, 6 months almost to the day after the attack, my husband had a heart attack. And I have to tell you, we were in the best shape of our lives because we were getting ready to leave a month from that date to go hike on the Appalachian Trail. We were going to finish it. So when he ended up going to the hospital after a bit, and they did what they did, there were no blockages. They couldn't find anything wrong with his heart. I mean, the kind of heart attack he had, they called a widowmaker, but it didn't make me a widow. I believe it was from the stress of all of that.
Yeah.
I believe it really broke his heart. Yeah. In a lot of ways, so we didn't end up going on a hike. That got canceled, but that was in 2020 too.
Yeah.
So
yeah, everything got canceled in
right,
2020.
So it was like, and once we weren't going on the hike, I had a couple of clients that were like, repeat clients that I had let go, and they found out I wasn't going on a hike, and they ended up asking me they'd already transferred, but they still wanted me at their birth.
Yeah.
And so I was able to go to their birth, and just be with them, which was a balm to my heart. It really was.
Yeah.
And then because we weren't going and I didn't know what else to do, I just, people would call me that did, just didn't know if I was still practicing. And I just gradually, inched back into practicing.
Yeah.
And, now and that's a whole nother story that we can, you'll hear from Hannah, but I'm partnering now with an Australian midwife who's come to the States for her own reasons, that she can share her story, and we got connected. And so now we're just in the process of I'm forming my PMA like you have.
Yeah.
Do you call yours a PMA or PCA?
Yeah, it was started as a PCA, but Jason, who set him out, they've switched it back to the PMA language. Okay. They're both the same thing.
And that's what I'm doing with Jason as well. And so I'm in the final stages of that. which means taking my services out of the public sphere and putting them just within the membership society that I'm creating
Right.
to serve these people. So I think that's going to be really helpful for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
But still practicing, being more careful, I guess, more discerning than I was before about the clients that I take.
Yeah.
Which is hard for me because I tend to believe the best about someone unless they give me a reason not to.
Right.
And so it's been hard for me to, I guess I'm learning discernment of a different level. I'm learning discernment of a different level. And as you know, you and I and all of our, midwifery group, we've had so many stories about learning to trust your gut.
Yeah.
And, really it only takes, and I know that all women can relate to this, or if they can't now, they will, you have just, all you can explain it is a little niggle, like,
Right.
But yeah, you're like, oh no, it'll be fine. And you'd like talk yourself into whatever it is. And then something happens, and doesn't have to be tragic. It can just be, oh, I did like you're sending a text, you're doing a text and you're getting ready to hit send and you think, I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, well, there's nothing wrong with it. You send it and you're like, oh, and then, stuff hits the fan because you sent that text and you're like, well, I did have that little warning. Why didn't I listen to it? And so you just learn over time
to listen to that.
Okay, I'm going to listen to that. Yeah, I'll listen to that. So that's where I'm at, really trying to be super discerning about who is a good fit, because it's not just it is actually not about me. It is about the mamas, and because I want to be a good fit for the mamas.
Yeah.
So in the process of all of that happening, at that particular, I'm saying peer review in quotes.
Yeah.
Because I was not in the professional world before. I was a mom, and I worked as an EMT, but they didn't have peer, they didn't do, stuff like that. So I was expecting kind of what I learned. Oh goodness, what's her name? Is it Vicki Penwell?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that's where I first heard an after action review.
Right.
What do we do good? What do we do wrong? What can we do better?
Yeah.
And, do we have any equipment notes? That to me, that's what I was kind of expecting at this peer review.
Yeah. A professional.
Yeah. Professional
assessment
objective.
of what had happened.
These are midwives, and they're looking at a midwife, and they want to find out what happened, and they want to help her be a better midwife, and they want to make observations, and she does too. That's what I was expecting. That's what
you should have received.
I would think, but that's not what happened. The best way to describe it is it was an inquisition. Yeah, it was an inquisition, and I remained calm throughout the whole thing. But a couple of the midwives did not. I had one midwife who was she literally just like came at the camera on Zoom like she was going to come through the computer at me, and said things. And then I had the midwife that I told you about that was a friend of mine that said, you can't be taking clients, the one that prompted me to ask the Lord about, and to her credit, the Lord used her for me to rehome my clients. So I had, I was honest with her. I said, I won't do that unless the Lord makes it clear. So he did. But she, since then has not been a friend, has decided not to be my friend. And, she was literally screaming at me. And, that was what they called a peer review. But here's the thing that I took away from that. Besides the fact that, whoa, that was not professional at all or objective. But
it reminds me so much of like the old world, like witch burning court the fair trials in quotes.
In name only.
Right, in name only, where they just had decided before they heard.
Absolutely. So after that, there were two questions that came up in that. I answered all their questions as best I could. There was only one question I couldn't answer, and that was when when the moderator asked me, Cindy, why do you want to be a CPM?
Yeah.
And I said, oh, nobody's ever asked me that before. If you keep touching her, she won't go away. Just letting you know. Go lay down.
The dog come up, and I was like,
nope, she won't go away if you keep touching her.
okay.
Why do you want to be a CPM, Cindy? I said, oh, nobody's ever asked me that. They've asked me, why do I want to be a midwife? I said, I'll have to think about that and get back with you. Because I really did. I was thinking, I don't know. I didn't have an answer.
Right.
And then the moderator started talking, and she said, Cindy, when I took my licensing exam, I believe it was in Texas. Some states take the CPM as their licensing guidelines,
right.
And then you just have to do something. And
Please stop.
and so she said the very last question on the test was, who is your chief responsibility to? And it was 3 choices: the attending physician, the client, or your midwifery community. And she said, how would you answer that question? And I said, oh, to my client. And they said, well, that's what most people say, but you would be wrong. And I thought, I almost don't remember all that she said after that, because my mind is going a million miles a minute. Like, wait, what? Wait, what? And she said, no, that's what most people think, but your chief responsibility is to your midwifery community. And then she talked a little bit about that. And I just sat there in stunned silence because I didn't know what to say. So then the whole thing ended finally. It was like 7 hours of sitting right here where you are and listening to everything. So anyway, I didn't really sleep well for 2 nights because I was thinking about those 2 questions.
Right.
And so
they send me reeling.
Oh,
just
yeah.
reeling.
I know. So the first one was kind of an easy one. Why do you want to be a CPM? And I didn't have an answer for that. So it was really more of a question. Why do I want to be a CPM? And there's a storm coming. That's what's happening. Yeah. Okay. Why do I want to be a CPM? I didn't have an answer. Why? If that's what they believe, like if the certifying body that is certifying women as certified professional midwives, if that's what they believe, I don't know. Why would I want to be a CPM? Right. And then the second thing was I couldn't align myself with an organization that's what they are purporting, that the midwifery community is their chief responsibility. Now, let me say this. I understand what the reasoning is behind it, right? I understand why, because I've heard all their arguments, but all I know is that the woman in front of me is the woman who hired me.
Right.
And speaking for myself, my responsibility is to give all that I have as a woman, as a person, as a midwife, give everything that I have to this woman. And I wanted midwifery community, and I actually have midwifery community. Yeah. It's just it's very little of it local, but it's, I do have great midwifery community now, and that's wonderful, but it's healthy. It's healthy. As you know, our group that we have, that's throughout the states, we ask for peer review. We ask for feedback, and we receive it and we give it, but we do it with a sense of just love, right, and compassion and directness, mm-hmm, but kindness, So I think that's healthy, and that's what we really needed, but that was not what was happening here. So so it was kind of ironic that they were telling me that my midwifery community should come before the woman, and I'm thinking,
the ones that are belittling me,
right?
And
the ones
at
that
me
have
haven't stopped to even
we're
ask
throwing
what was happening in the birth.
The sticks on the bonfire,
right?
Because part of let me just say this: I totally understand for people for the majority of the midwives in my community did not really know me.
Yeah, they
didn't know me as a person; they just knew about me, and so of course, because I was told not to talk to anybody, not to do peer review by my attorney. She said, you just can't right now. You can't do peer review. And so I would have to say, when, like, my good friend that I said is no longer a friend, I think the reason she dropped me was because she kept asking me questions, because this woman was saying all these, she did this, she did this, she didn't do this, she did blah, blah. And my friend would say, is this true? And all I could say was, no, it's not. But she said that. I said, I understand what she said. Well, why? And she was asking me details. And I said, I can't talk about it. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I can't talk about it. And it just, I understand. If all you heard about a person was what you heard on social media,
Right.
well then,
Of a grieving, angry.
right. Then I understand.
I understand her grief. Well, I don't understand her grief.
No, I don't
I
either.
can't understand the level of grief that she
Right.
was walking through.
But as far as the
But,
midwifery
it makes
community,
mental sense,
Right,
that she
right.
would respond. And
I understand the midwifery community really being fearful and wanting answers
Right.
from me. So I understand that. But so it's just ironic that they did not come around me in support and kindness. And
So you're telling me they didn't make their midwifery community their number one priority?
it almost felt like they were circling the wagons.
Yeah.
But it wasn't around me.
Right.
And so I just think it's ironic that they were saying that my midwifery community should be the priority.
Right.
When they didn't do jack for me. As a matter of fact, it was the opposite.
Exactly.
So, but
they forgot that you were part of that community.
Right. So I understand the theory behind it, but here's why it was so egregious and why it's so. And I do have to say, because I'm an Enneagram 8, and the good side of an 8, which also, as you know, can be the dark side, is that we're very protective of those in our care.
Yeah.
And so when I have women who are laboring or, I'm just protective of the people in my care. And also I'm pretty fearless too. And that can also be the dark side of that is I can be, what's the word? Impetuous, or, I like to call it spontaneous, but, but I have not, and I do not operate out of fear. And it's actually foreign. It's actually foreign to me, the idea. But I understand how easy it would be in it, because I've lived through it. I understand how easy it would be. Where was I?
Just really looking at the CPM.
Oh, yeah.
And how
so,
you
right.
responded to that question.
So what that looks like in practice, not in NARM theory, what that looks like in practice is what I've had happen over and over and over again. And that is, this happened 7 months ago. A woman calls me. Oh, actually, the doula called me because the woman was, her waters had broken. She's full term, 39 weeks. Her waters had ruptured, no labor. And she had paid a home birth midwife. And the home birth midwife had said, okay, well, if you don't go into labor, and by now it had been like 12 hours. If you don't go into labor in the next few hours, then you have to transfer to the hospital. And so I'm thinking to the doula, so why are you calling me?
Right.
She said, well, she wants to know if you would come to her birth. Now that's kind of a tricky thing for me because I don't know this woman,
Right.
but she's reaching out to me, she's calling me. And so I have a conversation with her and, I say, okay, well, what if you offer your midwife for you to tell her what all the risks are, potential risk of having extended ruptured membranes without labor. And she signs off on it as a true informed consent. I said, I didn't I wasn't disrespectful to the midwife because every midwife has the right to decide what her parameters are.
Yeah.
And I said, besides, she has some legitimate concerns, right? She has some legitimate concerns, especially if you're in the medical model and that's what all the data is based on, right? Because nobody's studying home birth.
Yeah.
If you look at the data, there's some legitimate concerns but what are they doing in the hospital?
Right.
They're dragging their fingers up in there every 4 hours or something. So of course there's going to be a higher risk of infection.
Yeah.
So anyway, long story short, this woman hired me and I attended her. Another woman.
So the midwife didn't want to do the informed consent.
Oh, absolutely not. No, she was not in labor, but she fired the midwife, who, by the way, insisted on doing a vag exam.
Of course.
Right. fired the midwife. An hour after she fired the midwife, she actually started labor. And so it's those kind of women, or it's women like just, recently, a woman, first baby. So, first babies usually go a little bit longer statistically, but this one was coming up on 43 weeks, and her wonderful midwife practice. I'm actually friends with one of the midwives, love them to death. They, but their practice guidelines that they have lined out that they won't cross is they won't attend a birth after 43 weeks.
Yeah.
And so this mama was like, well, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Well, you have to transfer to the hospital. And so one thing led to another. She ended up calling me, and I said, you know what? This was, this was a week before she went into labor. I said, you know what? You're probably going to go into labor this weekend. So go love your husband, do all these oxytocin things, and you're probably just going to have your baby. Let me know when you have your baby. But if you don't by next Wednesday, then give me a call. Well, she ended up calling me. And so, but what I'm saying is that's the kind of thing that it's not that either of these moms, and I could tell you 10 stories like that.
Yeah. Oh, I've got a few too.
Yeah. I mean, we all could, right?
Yeah.
It's not, we're not talking about, you're having a temperature and your water's been broke and now you're getting a fever and
There's
you're worried about infection.
That are
no,
issue.
We're just talking about simply numbers.
Yep.
Simply numbers. And that's what's lacking. You know how I told you how sweet it was that the first midwife I had actually touched me and assessed me and she was taking everything into account, not just numbers.
Right.
And that's what's not being done.
Yeah.
What's being done is, I don't want to impose anything on anybody. I don't know what anybody's thinking, but I know in the medical model, it's like managing risk and managing, they're just afraid somebody's going to sue them for a good reason, right? There's not a joke, malpractice insurance there for a reason. But in the home birth community, we're not licensed or regulated in Georgia.
Yeah.
Thank God, we don't have to follow licensing guidelines, because that's what licensing does. Yeah. It puts medical industrial model template over the home birth midwives. Yeah. And then you're obliged to that more than the client.
Right.
And I can't.
Then you have to protect the midwifery community before your client.
That's right.
So then you end up in this place of it's just covering our butts. Right. We have to cover our assets, and this is the model we're in because we got our license, we got our regulated, our certificate from NARM, and we have to answer here, which means when you have a woman who's saying, I feel healthy, my baby is fine, I want to continue on my home birth plan. Sorry, I can't attend you because you're not my number one priority. And that's what it boils down to.
That's right.
It's heartbreaking.
It is.
It's and infuriating, to be honest.
It is. So
what was your response to that?
To
that peer review? And
my response to that was I sent them a resignation letter. And I don't know if you want me to read it or
if you want to.
Okay. Yeah. And I got a lot of inspiration. I actually, now Sister Morningstar and I are not aligned in a lot of ways, but I do take a lot of inspiration from her and some of the things that she does as far as midwifery. So I sent 2 days later, this letter to the NARM board. First, please extend my thanks to those midwives who volunteered their time and emotional energy for that long, hard day on Good Friday. That did not go unnoticed by me. As a birthing mother, I had 2 hospital births, a community midwife-assisted birth, and a free birth. I am a midwife trained by a variety of midwives, which I consider a great benefit. Who I am as a midwife is inextricable from who I am as a woman of faith. I believe and practice reverence for the health of my body, soul, and spirit, inseparable till the death of the body. I love education and have been and will always be a lifelong learner. Because I do not believe pregnancy to be a pathology, my unwavering belief is that a well-nourished, well-educated, well-supported, fearless woman will birth beautifully 95% of the time. I actually believe it's more than that. But my transfer rate is about 5%, so that's why I put that. I also believe fiercely and equally in personal autonomy and personal responsibility. I believe how and where and with whom a woman births to be a human rights issue. I despise and will not participate in the infantilization of women. My clients hire me for a reason. They come first, second, and last. They are my priority. I have and will always be truthful in all my dealings with all people. As a result of my beliefs, I was attacked, shamed, and treated with disdain and disgust behind closed doors out of the public eye. After the peer review on 4/15, my heart was so disturbed by the entire process, and especially the 2 questions, I could not sleep for 2 nights. As to the process, I expected to be treated with professionalism and objectivity and to maintain the same myself. I did sense that happened in the first hours while listening to the complainants and witnesses, but once the, quote, doors were closed to the public, that all went out the window. I was drilled Inquisition style, was interrupted when responding to question A with a comment or a question about B, C, and D. I was verbally attacked, shamed, and berated by 2 of the panel. The moderator intervened the first time, but not during the last and most vicious attack. It was clear objectivity and professionalism had left the building. As to the questions, the first was presented by the moderator. She said, "When I took my boards to be licensed in Texas, the question was, with whom does your chief responsibility lie, the client, the attending physician, or the midwifery community? How would you answer that question?" Without a moment's hesitation, I said, "With the client." That would be what a lot of people would say. That's not correct. It's with the midwifery community. I was so stunned, I'm sure I missed a few sentences she said after that. The second question from another midwife was, "Why do you want to be a CPM?" And I replied, as I said, "I'd have to get back with you." After my experience with the peer review, I'm of the opinion these dedicated, committed midwives on the peer review board care deeply about women in birth. I also see that they hold that secondary to their commitment to their protocols and their certification and licensure. I also believe the professional midwife has become one of the greatest risk factors in a primal, fearless, undisturbed birth. So I must continue to side with the mother who is still intuitive, fearless, and instinctual enough to birth bravely on her terms. As a result of what I witnessed and experienced at the peer review, this certification has very little value to me. It is with great respect and regret that I have decided to turn in my CPM credential. As you moved and influenced the promotion of professionalism of midwives, I pray you're granted wisdom, and with your wisdom, great kindness. And then I signed it. So
how do you feel having released that CPM with such an eloquent letter? I adore that letter.
Thank you.
Where I know, where are you headed now, and how does that feel to write that?
It felt very, from a place of great genuine, it felt very genuine, and it felt exact. It expressed what I wanted it to. I have to tell you, before I hit send, it was hard, Lauren, because anybody out there who's trained to be, I mean, I didn't train. I trained as an apprentice. I didn't go to school. I mean, it's hard. It's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of nonsense. It's a lot of, I now realize, a lot of politics, which I didn't know when I was going into it. Right. So I was like behind the curve, but it was 4 years of just incredible hardship to finally get it done.
Yeah.
So the idea of turning that in, or not identifying or not associating myself with that just because of the blood, sweat, and tears. I mean, it was before I hit send, I took a minute to like feel the gravity of that. Yeah. and the loss of that. But after I hit send, it is like a weight was lifted from me, because there was no doubt in my mind that I could continue to practice. I couldn't figure out how to practice as, now there are women out there who do practice as CPMs. They've figured out how to do it in integrity.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. I don't even know that all CPMs know what they said.
Yeah.
I know that 99.9% of women who are hiring CPMs have no idea that that's what NARM believes.
Yeah.
And that possibly their midwife believes.
Right.
So that to me was the most egregious transgression to me, is that these women need to know what where their midwives' loyalties lie.
Right.
They need to know
or it's not even about the individual CPMs, right? It's about this like big umbrella of an organization that most people think in order to be a midwife, you have to be aligned with this organization. And that's their belief system. And like to choose to come into alignment with that. And like, that's what you're saying when I'm a CPM, whether you realize it or not,
right.
It's coming into that. This is their standard. This is their belief and the politics around it. And yeah, like it's still mind blowing. I don't know that I have words yeah. It's just,
I mean, it reminds me of in the throes of all of this, there was another midwife that called me, and she was basically asking me questions, which I wasn't quite able to answer, but this was her response. I said, I tried to answer it without giving a lot of details. And I said, well, I talked to her about this. We discussed this, and this is what she chose, whatever it is we were talking about. And she said, Cindy, we can't just let them choose that. And I went, what?
Excuse me?
What? I didn't even know. I mean, I think the conversation was over quickly because I didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, so we've burned down the patriarchy, but now we've got the matriarchy?
Right.
Like, that's better.
We're gonna infantile, as you said in your letter. Like
how do you say that?
I have no idea.
Yeah, it's a tricky word.
Treat
them like a baby.
Treat them like a baby, as if they can't make wise, powerful, informed decisions
about their birth, about their body and their baby.
Which then kind of makes sense why we see such a horrendous lack of informed consent and refusal, is if you don't believe that they can actually make an informed decision,
then why would you give
even give them an informed consent refusal if you believe that they can't understand what you're telling them anyways, and we need to make a decision for them? Why would you? Like, it's just a waste of paper at that point.
But that was from a home birth midwife. That did shock me that she would say
absolutely.
That.
Well, that's where they're, I mean, again, it's when you're trained under that model and you're submitted to what starts at the top rolls down, right? Like that's true in every area of life. And so I know that was a large part of why I wouldn't become a CPM, because I was seeing the politics of their belief systems. And so
if I was a student now, I mean, even if I didn't know this particular, but even if I was a student now, and I have 2 students now that because of this, they walked through this. They've been my assistants in that they were just getting ready to make their decision about which midwifery school to go to to become a CPM or whatever, when all this stuff went down, and they've both decided to go the traditional midwifery route.
Right.
Yeah. And, I'm glad that I did. And I wouldn't.
Oh yeah. Your life you're not in any real systems in much of your life, right? Like you pretty much have.
Yeah. It's consistent with how I live my life. I mean, if I'm in a wreck and my arm is over there, then I'm thankful for the emergency room and for the surgeon and for the anesthesia. Right.
Yeah.
But apart from that, I'm not a part of the allopathic medical system at all.
Yeah.
And, this, and which aligns with my philosophy on birth. It's not a medical event.
Yeah.
And of course I'm grateful when we do need a medical intervention in a rare situation. If a medical event
should happen in the middle of a birth,
then it becomes a medical event.
And it needs to go to a hospital. Is a medical thing. The birth is not.
Right. And I'm grateful. I mean, I'm really grateful for when we need them, that they're there. But that doesn't mean that I have to use them all when I don't need them.
Right.
So.
So we have traversed a long period of time from your births of your own babies to how you are sitting with women now. And so much nuggets of wisdom, a lot of heartache, a lot of overcoming. What would you want to leave the listener with today?
I keep going back to trusting your gut. And not everybody that you and I don't know about you, but not everybody I serve are going to be Christians.
Right.
But I think that's something that translates in any faith. It just translates as a person, a human being who has a body. So there's a lot of somatic sensory things that I am, just becoming aware of in the past couple of decades that I wasn't aware of, or I dismissed or I pushed down as a young mom. So being aware and not dismissing what your intuition, your gut, and your body is telling you, whether that's about a provider, whether that's about your spouse or your kids, it's like really learning to tune in, and in the Christian culture, there's been a teaching about, don't be led by your feelings, the heart is deceitful and, desperately sick and, blah, blah, blah. And that's what I was like raised on as a Christian.
Right.
So it led to me, quite frankly, not paying attention to my feelings.
Yeah.
And so I guess I want to erase all that. Because I now don't believe that's, I understand where there are certain, we need to govern our emotions,
right?
But we don't need to ignore them,
right?
And
it's guard your heart,
right? Not
trap it in a basement and never listen to it.
Right. Yeah, so that would be the main thing, is really, really, and tuning into your intuition, especially when you're busy. I homeschooled. I had 4 kids close together. And so it's hard when you're just keeping people alive,
right?
You're just doing life, but you have to be jealous about somehow finding a minute or two to focus and tune in. You just have to. It becomes necessary for it should feel like the air that you breathe, to have connection and to your intuition and to your physical body, that what your body's telling you.
Yeah.
Not just for like decisions, but also for your health. I mean, how many moms, like, they have to go pee, but they're doing stuff and they put it off for 3 hours. I mean, that sounds like it, but that's not good for your health to not go pee when you really have to go pee, So I'm talking about this
or not eat when you have to eat.
I'm not making this into just like all spiritual. I'm like literally everything.
Yeah.
Listen to your body, listen to your gut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think as believers, we have that spirit, like Holy Spirit living within you, and how you discern that he's guiding you comes through our body. Like it comes like we're all one being. It's not a separate, okay, this is my body and this is my spirit, and it's easy to like,
and this is good and this is bad.
Yeah. It's this, you have to tune in and recognize when you're hearing him and what that feels like, and what your intuition that he gave you and what your body that he gave you is saying. It's the house, it's the temple. And it's just.
And the other thing, Lauren, that I would say is that for those of you who are on social media, or even if you're not on social media, if you just are in a community, and if you hear something about someone that you don't know, I mean, I think I had maybe 4 people, and I'm not exaggerating, out of thousands of emails, that knew they saw what was going on. And maybe they didn't know me that well, but they had enough discernment because they knew me a little bit. So they sent me an email or a text and say, I don't know the full story, and I don't know what's going on for real. I have a feeling there's more to it than what I'm seeing. And I just want you to know, I love you, or I'm here for, I'm with you. And those messages. So all I'm saying is, when you hear something, just be so slow to judge.
Yeah.
Just because there were.
Don't join the mob mentality.
What's that?
The mob mentality. Don't join the mob.
Yeah. No, Lauren, I have no doubt in my mind that if it had been back in the day, I'd have been barbecued. I'm not even joking. You were there with me.
Saw.
Yeah, I would have been barbecued, So
they would have had to barbecue me too next to you, because
yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so that's it. Just listen and learn to trust your gut, and also be very, very slow if you see something that's printed about somebody to make a judgment.
You only have one side of the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that the public doesn't quite understand, is that, even if you're not, like, even outside of HIPAA, like, just in general, like,
confidentiality of my client is of the utmost importance to me. You're not going to share all of the things and all the decisions she made and didn't make, and like the person that they were coming after couldn't answer those questions in integrity. Right? Like you not defending yourself made them more mad, but that was actually the integral thing to do.
Yeah. And it's what the Lord told me.
Absolutely. And
so if I had a doubt about how I was supposed to respond, when the Lord made that very clear to me, don't defend yourself, then that was clear.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It was hard though. It was very hard because the things that she was saying were just awful. But trust your gut and just be really slow to believe what you read. Yeah. If that's all you know about that person.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I love that. And thank you for sharing your story. And would you like to pray for our listeners, or do you want me to? Brooke and I always like to end our podcast with a prayer.
Yeah. I'd like to.
Awesome.
Father, Jesus, Holy Spirit, we invite you into this space and into our lives so that ultimately you will heal our union with you, so that as we trust you, we can please you. As we please you, we can reflect your love.
Yes.
And let that be so, Lord, and in all of our relationships, and as we go through our days. And I pray that only the words that you want to be impactful, only the words that you want to be heard, would be heard by the listeners, Lord. Thank you.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Holy Wild Birth. We hope that you were genuinely encouraged, inspired, and challenged by what you heard today. If you're loving what you hear, please make sure that you share it. Leave reviews. That helps other mamas find this content as well. And don't forget to read the show notes, okay? Because that's where you can find our email address if you want to reach out to us and start a conversation. It's also where you'll find free offerings as well as invitations to work with me and or Lauren. We can't wait to get to know you. See you next week.